Hello out there in cryptocurrency land. Welcome back to Real Crypto. Thank you for joining me today in these very slow market times. And what is Bitcoin giving us for our patience during these slow market times? Well, Bitcoin is giving us more slow, more choppy action. Now, in my last video, we talked about possibly making a lower low here, putting in a nice inverted head and shoulders, possibly a move to the upside. Well, it doesn't look like that's going to happen. This immediate head and shoulders that I discussed in my last video has been negated at this point in time. You could make an argument we do still have the possibility for that head and shoulders to play out, but this right shoulder seems very elongated, usually atypical, and so it may not result in anything. But right now we're stuck in this sideways channel action. Now I've highlighted these channel marks here. You have the 9,000 in the top range and 78.60, 78.50 at the lower part of the range here. And so looks like we're range bound right now. We have a double top putting in this top and a double bottom putting in this bottom areas. And so we may chop around here. We don't have to do it for any specific period of time. And I talk about this in my market cycles webinar, is that during choppy markets, it's really hard to know when they start, and it's really hard to know exactly when they end because they neither start nor end with a bang. It's very boring action. Usually it's lower volume action, which we're seeing here, lower volume action. So we just have to wait and see what happens. For an intermediate term trade, we're not going to get any signals for a while now. We're just kind of chopping around, and that's what the term choppy market refers to. So Bitcoin choppy market, good low volume though, not too bad. As we usually go in these choppy markets, it usually happens in a low volume environment, and I go into more detail on that in my webinar. Let's go into these other top cryptocurrencies, at least on the GDAX. Start with Bitcoin Cash. Bitcoin Cash, after a very nice bull run to the upside, good volume. We have a nice volume flattening out, creating this nice bull flag for us. We want to see some good action coming out of this bull flag if we're going to be bullish. Or if we're just going to chop around in Bitcoin, I would anticipate Bitcoin Cash not doing much, and maybe this flag gets negated. Maybe we put in kind of a channel here. It's hard to say exactly, but the volume will lead us forward in one direction or another. If you're noticing on the charts here, we do have increasing volume to the downside, albeit slightly, and that downside action is this action right here. Nothing crazy, bringing us down towards the bottom of this flag pattern. And typically the bottom of these flag patterns can be bought, so this would be a good buy, although you are running right into resistance. So it's not a really good risk reward trade. It's basically a wait and see trade, just like most of the rest of the market right now. Now Ethereum, a little bit of a different pattern. Still have that head and shoulders in play. Still head and shoulders in play in Ethereum. I did draw this trend line here yesterday, just trying to see if this trend broke. Looks like it did break. So we can take that out of there. And let's actually draw this trend line for this particular head and shoulders. Now this looks like this could play out. I did have this inverted head and shoulders. There we go. I did have this inverted head and shoulders right here. This is the target line for that. Not sure if that happens, but if we take this line and repurpose it for this head and shoulders pattern. So with the head and shoulders, you can actually infer a downside target, and that's how I got these on my last video. You take the lows between the shoulder and the head here, and the low between the head and the shoulder here, and you draw a trend line, and then you take the top of the head to this trend line you just drew, and you actually move that lower to where you think you may break the neckline here. It's called the neckline, and then you can infer a downside target. Well, this infers us down to about the 700 level, 693, about the 700 level. So maybe that happens, maybe that doesn't, but you can kind of put that on your charts there. Just kind of keep an eye out for it. As we just saw in Bitcoin, these chart patterns don't always have to play out, but you just have to keep an eye out for it. If you do see accelerated downside action, you can anticipate that chart pattern playing out. All right, so Ethereum here we have a potential head and shoulders trying to play out. We'll see what happens there. Going over to Litecoin, we still see that same head and shoulders pattern. Notice these altcoins aren't quite as strong as Bitcoin. Bitcoin has really beaten up these altcoins to the point where they're looking bearish while Bitcoin's looking a little bit more bullish. You can see this rise here in Ethereum wasn't near as high. Litecoin here, kind of the same thing. I drew the same trend line here on Litecoin. And notice we're chopping around the breakout from this longer term trend line. And I talked about this in that video. When you break these longer term trend lines, they don't always result in a big upside move. They can, and usually do these days, result in kind of a sideways move. What they basically, they take the bearishness out of the market, and they end up kind of leading us into a choppy trendless market where things rarely break out. Again, going back to my market cycles webinar, I talk about that in that market cycles webinar. You see this a lot. All right, so back to Bitcoin. Bitcoin range bound for the current time frame. We'll wait and see what happens here. So I'm really not going to do much. I actually don't have my alert set, so I'll set my alert just above that trend line, and then I'll go on about my life. And I will kind of wait for this to happen. I'm not really looking to make any trades at this moment in time. I'm pretty much just watching Bitcoin. It's going to set the tone of the market going forward, and excuse me, until Bitcoin chooses a direction, you're going to see a few select altcoins making moves, but I think the general direction of the market will be choppy and trendless, and breakouts are very likely to fail. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me today. I appreciate it very much, and I will see you next time.